Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepytime Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones that you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. Before we go any further, I would just like to have a chat to you listeners. I'm mainly reaching out to long-time listeners, but for new people this may be of interest as well. If you're finding the show helpful and you are listening to it a couple of nights a week or every night and it's helping you to get some sleep, you or someone you care about. And this is also very importantly, if you have the means to do so, I would like you to consider helping me grow the show by supporting it on Patreon. Thanks to the people who have signed up and joined me already, the show is not costing me money every month, which is very fantastic. So thank you for everyone who has signed up. And I would like to do a little bit of an upgrade on equipment and the like. I want to do a bit of a... Sound quality isn't quite where I like it to be. I do quite a lot of work to get it in as good a state as I can. But I need a decent microphone and some other little bits and pieces. And I'm going to get myself some stuff on Black Friday. But it would be really great if you listeners could help me cover those costs a little bit. So if you could consider joining up on the Patreon, or at least taking a look and seeing if it looks like something you might be willing to back at a later stage, please consider to do so. Even in the long term, I really would love to do this full time. I know it's years away, but I really find the show very satisfying, and I would love to put out more episodes and do some more creative stuff to help reach more people. But for right now, if you have even $1 a month to spare, that is helpful. I have a $1 level on the Patreon, and honestly, every single dollar does help me. And even at $1, you do get some real benefits. I release catnap bonus episodes on Radio Public, which aren't available anywhere else except to all patrons. So even at $1 a level, you can get that to listen to. That's an extra bonus episode every week. You'll also get a shout out on an episode, you get listed on the website, and you will get listed in the show notes as well. Incidentally, listing I only do with people's explicit consent. So if you don't want to be listed, that's also quite fine. I'll only do it if you say yes when I ask you. Because a lot of people just want to contribute without getting anything out of it. If you can stretch to $5 though, you get all those benefits from the $1 level. Plus you also get promo-free and story-only edits of the episodes. And as a bonus to new patrons, I was going to run this till the end of November, but I think I'm actually going to stretch it out to the end of December. I'm going to do a handwritten postcard to everybody who signs up at the $5 level. And I'm also my plan is if I reach $50 by the end of November, that's $50 a month on the Patreon by the end of November, I will do a bonus video episode, which I will release the video exclusive to all patrons, and the audio will be released as a bonus episode in January. If you would like to support the podcast, but you can't actually afford to put any money in my pocket personally, which is perfectly understandable, there are a couple of options to you as well. You can sign up to my Audible trial at audible.com/sleepytime. That gets you a free audiobook to keep, as well as a 30-day free trial of the Audible service, and I get a little bit of a kickback off that. And then also, I mentioned the catnap episodes. Those go up on Radio Public. So if you listen to that on the apps, you get served ads, and I get a little bit of something from there as well. And it's not very much, but as I say, every little bit helps. Also, just if you're finding the show helpful, tell people about it. Share it on social media and tag me so that I know, so I can reach out and say thank you. Or just tell someone you know. I feel weird sharing my podcast with people that I know, but the ones that have worked for me in the past, I've been very happy to share with others, and I think I've gained quite a few listeners. And I know I've got real cheerleaders, people like Jess from Vermont, who has been a supporter essentially since my second or third episode. I think she's been given Facebook reviews, and she's also backing me on Facebook, on Patreon rather now. And that also is fantastic. Just tell the people around you as well. And if 1 in 100 reach out, listen, and like it, then that's fantastic. And also, last but not least, I have to give a shout out to the music that I use for the show. I think it's a very important part of the show's identity. It's Undizer by Kumiku. Their music is available on the Free Music Archive, and I've linked their website and their Patreon in the show notes, as they've got some very cool stuff that they release under various different names that I recommend taking a look at. Thank you very much, and back to what you're here for. So what exactly is Sleepytime Tales? What is it for? It's a bit of a strange idea, isn't it? I mean, it's a podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to. But in the 21st century, lack of sleep is something of a health crisis. And this is a podcast that is intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, with your mind spinning and your emotions in turmoil? Are the anxieties of 21st century life and the stresses of your day-to-day getting to you? Do you find you wake up in the middle of the night and you just can't quite doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. Now, I'm someone who has struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. My parents had sleepless nights with me for many years, and even once I got old enough not to bother them, I always had a struggle to sleep. It was quite recently that I discovered the tendency for droning male voices to act something almost like a sedative for me. So, after listening to some podcasts for a while, specifically for the purpose of falling asleep, and discovering that there are podcasts out there also that are intended to help people sleep, I realized I've got a boring, droning male voice, so I'd give it a go and see how it works out. Every episode starts with this long, slow intro. It's not everybody is fond of it, but it is here for a reason. The main purpose of this intro, which usually goes on about 15 or so minutes, including the promotional section, is there's two reasons for it. The primary one is I'm going to explain to new listeners exactly what this is, because after all, as I say, it is a bit of a strange idea. And the secondary reason is for people who've been listening a while, and I've heard back from quite a few who've confirmed this to me, is that it's part of their sort of process of preparing to sleep. It's the time to put it on, put your phone where you can't see it, have a glass of water, brush your teeth, get yourself snuggled into your blankets after making sure your room's not too hot or not too cold. And because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a space together, a mental nest or cave, even a little cabin for you to snuggle into and get some sleep. Now, as far as I know, there's a couple of different complementary ways to engage with the show. For me, when I struggle to sleep, what I need is something I can listen to that keeps my mind focused on a single point so that I don't let those anxieties of modern life get to me. Although I'm going to be honest, life's pretty good right now, but anxiety, I wouldn't say I've got a disorder, but, the stress of life has always got something niggling in the back of your head. So I need something that I can listen to keep my mind focused on so that those things don't get to me and my mind doesn't spin out of control with stress. For other people, they just need something that drones in the background. Turn the volume down and listen to my boring, drony male voice going on, something almost like some people like the sounds of the ocean or the sound of rain. I love the ocean, but I don't find it particularly relaxing myself, to be honest. I like to be out there in the waves, getting beaten up and smashed into the sand, so I don't find ocean noises relaxing. Rain is another story, though. It's rained quite a lot here the last few days, and that really has helped me sleep, just this in the background. That's pretty good for me, but If that's not your thing, I'm here to be that background droning voice. So tonight I'm doing a movie episode. Done a couple of movie episodes so far for the purpose of the show, and I'm doing something a little bit different. Got a Netflix trial the other day, and I was wanting to watch Always Be My Maybe. I'm not a big romantic comedy person, but every now and then one really hits me, and the trailer for this looked fantastic. Very, very good, starring Ali Wong and Randall Park. Spoiler alert for the review, I love it. Pretty typical of romantic comedy in most ways, but slightly different perspectives and very sharply written, very well acted and well written, so I can recommend it. So the main thing is, whatever the story is about, tonight's review or another one of my more original ones or another mythology episode, whatever it is, the main thing is you don't try to force the sleep. Don't try to throw yourself into it. Just listen to the story and keep a light mental grip on the thread, just so that when the need for sleep comes creeping up on you, you don't resist. Now, obviously, I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but it's important you don't feel pressurized. If this is your first night with us, welcome. Thank you for trying this out, but it still may not work for you on your first night. It may take a few nights for you to get used to listening to my voice. It's possible that my accent is strange to you. Maybe one episode isn't long enough. I heard from a listener recently who said that he usually has to have 2 or 3 playing and before it sinks in, but he's patient and he just listens to the story and waits, and that's what I'm here for. Whether I heard from somebody else yesterday, Debbie, thank you for getting in touch. She doesn't even make it out of the intro. She's asleep before that happens. That's another reason for this long intro. Ideally, you can listen to this over and over and over again, and you might never actually hear the story. So the key is to be patient and relaxed. It's very important that you try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may take a few days to work for you. Secure up episodes or just stream the backlog. With sleep podcasts, what I do is I actually just let them stream all night. I lie in the dark with my earbuds in and I'll just let them run, and then when I wake up at 3 a.m., which is a new nasty habit that I've developed, I just pop the earbuds back in and I drift back to sleep. One of the things that's always quite frustrated me, but I've actually become a bit of a pleasure even, is I've got the tendency sometimes to wake up like 30 or 60 minutes before my alarm. What happens then is, again, like the 3 a.m. start, I pop my earbuds in and I go back to sleep again. That 30 to 60 minutes often is the best part of my night. There's just something about allowing myself to relax completely right before the alarm that's just very deeply satisfying. And so you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark. And while you do that, I tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener, my nighttime friend who has elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. The one thing I can promise you is you'll always be safe with me. My stories will never have children in peril or weird creepy crawlies or anything that's going to make you tense, because I'm here to help you to relax, to improve your life in a small way. Or maybe not so small. People don't sleep very well these days, and it makes their lives harder. So I'm here to do my small part to help you in a big way. To help you to face tomorrow and the day after, well rested and better able to cope and process. Something that's very key for me and very important to me, and something I believe very strongly, especially in the context of sleepy time tales and trying to sleep, is I believe in the benefits of kindness. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And I need you to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense and excited if you just can't get yourself over the edge of sleep, even with me here trying to help. I think a lot of us have been familiar with that frustration that builds up when we can't sleep, when the clock's ticking and that becomes something to focus on and something to stress about, and it doesn't help. Frustration is a huge enemy of your sleeping, and the intention with this podcast is to short-circuit that frustration. Don't watch the clock. Keep your eyes closed and listen to my voice, and don't blame yourself. Just listen to the story. And so when you can't drift off into the dark, you're not even thinking of blaming yourself for it. So take a breath. Forgive the fact you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep and a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, if you just can't get to sleep, forgive yourself and try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep is something like an enemy. But it is not your enemy. It is a natural process that we have been pulled away from by stress and life and progress that shines bright blue lights in our eyes at all hours. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. Welcome to the Sleepytime Tales review of Always Be My Maybe. The movie is charming and enjoyable, and I hope that this review makes it sound appealing, but also doesn't keep you awake. Now, Always Be My Maybe is a 2019 romantic comedy starring Ali Wong and Randall Park. It was written by Ali Wong, Randall Park, and playwright Michael Golamko, who, interestingly, is a frequent contributor, or was a frequent contributor on the TV series Grimm. It was directed by Nanachka Khan, a very experienced writer and creator of the sitcom Fresh Off the Boat, and this is her first outing as a director. Ali Wong is well-known as a comedian, as well as being a writer and an actress. Randall Park is also similarly multi-talented. He is probably better known than Wong as an actor. He is well known from many roles in television. One of my personal favorites is Governor Danny Chung in Veep. He also has had a lot of small roles in many major movies, including Aquaman and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Wong has had a little bit less on-screen experience, besides her stand-up specials, but she's had an extensive career as a writer, as well as stand-up, and she's done a lot of voice work, including voicing Bertie in the animated TV series Tuca and Bertie, alongside Tiffany Haddish. Tuca and Bertie, unfortunately, has been cancelled. I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've enjoyed what I've seen. It's definitely worth checking out. If you've got Netflix, and if you're watching Always Be My Maybe, you probably do, I definitely recommend having a look at Tuca and Bertie as well. Ali Wong and Randall Park met via mutual friends several years ago and have supported each other's work since then, basically. They, a while ago, started working on a script for what they called The Asian When Harry Met Sally, and when word about it got out, there was quite a strong campaign to get the show made. Get the movie made, rather. Now, it's a bit of a tricky choice for a review, this. Romantic comedies tend to be, well, they I don't want to sound dismissive, but romantic comedies have a format. In many ways, Always Be My Maybe is a very typical romantic comedy. It's about childhood friends Sasha Tran and Marcus Kim, who grow up together from middle school. They spend all their time together as very good friends, with nothing romantic happening, and then after his mother passes away, and after her funeral, they hook up in his rust bucket Corolla, and things get a little bit weird. They have a fight when they go get something to eat afterwards, and then they don't speak again for 16 years. We jump ahead in time, and we find out that she is a very successful celebrity chef in Los Angeles, who has her own restaurant, and she's opening up a new one in San Francisco, which is where she grew up. So, and also in a lot of ways, the movie plays with the whole will they or won't they thing, which romantic comedies always do, and the answer is always they will. Not a spoiler to say that it has a happy ending, because at the end of the day, it is a romantic comedy. But where a good rom-com stands out is the quality of the script and the twists along the way and the quality of the performances. The script is extremely sharply written. The dialogue is punchy and quick and full of wit, and it is very well performed. Wong and Park both are charming, personable people. Ali Wong plays a bit of a uptight A-type personality. Randall Park sort of plays with Asian stereotypes. He's a bit of a slacker. And the cast is full of ringers. There's a lot of particularly Asian actors that you'll go, oh, hey, yeah, I know him. Oh, yeah, I know her. They've usually played minor roles as magical advisors or something to white protagonists. But here they get to stand on their own and play with tropes and overturn them in often fascinating ways. So there's a lot of familiar faces here that you've seen in small token roles who are standing on their own, and really fantastic performers. Now, another complication making a review of this is if you've seen the trailer for Always Be My Maybe, you know 3/4 of what happens in the movie, although I absolutely do recommend you watch the trailer. It does give away a lot of surprises, but one of the big surprises that it gives away, I think, is actually essential for the success of the movie, is Sasha breaks up with her restaurant manager boyfriend, or promoter boyfriend rather, played by Daniel Day Kim, also an actor I'm very fond of ever since the days of Lost. And he goes off to find himself, and then they eventually break up, and she hooks up with a celebrity, and it is revealed in the trailer in a fantastic way, and in the movie even better, that it's Keanu Reeves, played by Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves apparently was the first choice of person for the role. He is also on the ascendancy at the moment, so they did not believe that they would get him to agree to perform in the movie. I'm pretty sure he must have taken a major pay cut to work on a Netflix budget it probably took him a day's work. It was just amazing. But he was honored to be in it. Something that is, I think, frequently forgotten about Keanu Reeves is that he is Asian. And so I think he likes to support other Asian performers. We know his work when the stunt people. He's very supportive of Asian stunt people and performers in action movies, and I'm sure the chance to do a romantic comedy. I think they filmed this before the new. Yes, they did film this before the new Bill and Ted. He must have been wanting to get into his comedy chops again. I can't say too much about what happens outside of what's in the trailer. The trailer itself is quite funny, and well, Sasha and Keanu obviously end up breaking up because Sasha and Marcus have to be together by the end. But the whole process goes in some very fascinating ways, and I highly recommend it. I've got a particular respect for huge celebrities who play themselves as, well, douchebags. The Keanu Reeves in Always Be My Maybe is very Keanu Reeves, very warm, very friendly. Everything you've ever heard about him as a person is there, sort of dialed up to 12 in a way that is unpleasant. And, I can't say too much else, but it goes a very fascinating direction, and you have to watch this movie, even if it's not the best thing, and if romantic comedies are not the best thing. It's 120 minutes of your life, and it's just thoroughly enjoyable. Just thinking about other people who've played themselves as douchebags, I think back to a movie I barely remember, 2003 Stuck on You, with Matt Damon and Greg Kinnear. That's got Cher in it, playing Cher, who is evil and fantastic. And another one of my favorites, actors playing themselves, is James Van Der Beek in Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. If you can get your hands on that show, it's also just absolutely fantastic. A 2-season sitcom that was cut off far too soon. But James Van Der Beek playing a neurotic ex-Dawson's Creek actor is just absolutely class. jumping back to the beginning of the movie, it starts with a young 12-year-old Sasha. She gets home to a semi-divided house. She's alone. Her parents are off minding their store. They're typical sort of hard-working immigrant story. The parents doing everything to provide for their children and not being there for their children. She gets home. She cooks herself some fried spam with rice. It's a sad-looking meal, but she does what she's doing what she can to try and make it look nice. She fans the slices of spam out. The rice is like very neat, and that's well presented, and she sprinkles it with some dry spices, obviously trying to get some excitement in. Then the doorbell rings. At the door is a young Marcus. He has a really funny bit about his mum making too much soup, so please can Sasha come and eat some of it, because he doesn't want to take soup to school. He doesn't want to be the weird thermos kid who no one wants to sit with, except the other thermos kids, and he doesn't want to sit with the other thermos kids because thermos kids are weird. Like I say, very sharply written, very well performed. The child actors are really, really good. They are utterly believable in their roles. So Sasha makes a joke about no, she doesn't want to, shuts the door in his face. And then says, just kidding, opens up, and then she goes to have dinner at Marcus's house. We see Marcus's mum is busy teaching Sasha how to cook. Marcus's family are Korean. I didn't look it up. I think Sasha's family are Vietnamese. Tran, I think, is a Vietnamese name. I really should have looked that up before carrying on. But Marcus's mom is showing Sasha how to cook Korean style, using scissors to cut things. And of course, we've seen her restaurant. No, we don't at this point. We cut later to her restaurant, where we find out that it's elevated Asian style cooking. So we learn that essentially Marcus's mom inspired her to become a chef. Well, she seemed to have the inclination the way she was trying to present her really sad spam meal. But it was Marcus's mother that really reached her and taught her how to actually do it properly. We follow along from when they're around 12, when they're up to college age. See little snippets of their lives. It's like a montage. They were always very good friends with no sign of romance happening. He had a band, all Asian band called Hello Peril. Obviously a play on the racist Yellow Peril idea of Asian threat to Western lifestyle. I don't think we hear much about the band at this stage or what they sound like. He is busy teaching her how to fish off a pier, which is a surprisingly funny scene. I'm not a fan of fishing myself, so it's quite funny how it builds up to like this complete disappointment. So also absolutely worth taking a look at. She makes a comment about, I hope they catch a cheeseburger, when his father comes with news about the mother's death. Up till then, it was a very fun scene. No real surprises in it, but very well performed. And in a lot of ways, that pretty much sums up this movie. Not too many in the way of surprises, but the performances are just exemplary. So we have a little bit of a build-up again to the big, where they fall out. They have their fallout. Obviously, it's after the mother's funeral. Sasha takes Marcus out. They spend the day together. And as I mentioned, they hook up in his car. And obviously, there's the dynamic of the relationship was not very much like this dynamic of the relationship. So things are now a bit weird between them. Marcus doesn't seem to be processing his mother's loss very well, so he starts lashing out at Sasha, and she leaves. And they don't see each other again for 16 years. We see her as the head chef, executive chef at her restaurant. She's being quite harsh on all the junior chefs, trying to get things perfect. She's got very high standards for her work. And her assistant, very heavily pregnant assistant, is trying to get her to leave because she's got to go spend 2 months setting up her new restaurant in San Francisco. So she heads back to San Francisco. She's renting a very large house for 2 months. She must be super successful to be renting a place this size. And she must also be doing very well because she must be doing extremely well because she gets air conditioning installed into a house she's staying in 2 months. It doesn't seem very cost effective to me, but hey, not my money. And the reason this is an important factor is because Marcus and his dad show up doing to do the aircon installation. It's very awkward. Marcus barking into Sasha again. They haven't spoken in a long time. Last time they spoke, it was a huge fight. And yeah, it's delightfully awkward. And Marcus's father is very direct. He still thinks that Sasha and Marcus belong together, despite the fact they haven't spoken in 16 years. He goes out to the van to give Sasha a flyer for Marcus's band. Hello Peril is still together. Had a few lineup changes, but still going. At first she says she's not going to go, but then she makes a meal that looked fantastic, but also sort of echoes with the early meal from the beginning of the movie that she was cooking herself. That was just looking kind of sad, eating by herself. So she gets her friend, the assistant, her childhood friend, and they go, heavily pregnant childhood friend, and they go to the bar to see Marcus's band perform. Something I thought was quite interesting about the band was they sound a lot like, I don't know, anybody remembers Fort Minor, which was a pretty big band in the late 90s, early 2000s, an offshoot of Linkin Park. Marcus is the keyboard player and rapper/singer, and he performs, and to be honest, the band's pretty good. They're a solid performance. After the show, they meet Marcus's girlfriend Jenny, who is an Asian woman who's a big fan of Sasha's, as it turns out. Marcus told Jenny that he knew Sasha, he grew up with her, but she thought he was fibbing to sound like he hung out with a celebrity, which is a strange thing to accuse your partner of, I guess, thinking about it now. I mean, if my wife told me she knew someone famous, I would believe her. There's no reason to sound cool by making things up. Jenny she's an Asian woman, and she has her hair in dreadlocks, which becomes a thing Sasha makes a joke about later. Didn't even know it was possible for Asians to have dreadlocks. Marcus sends her a little video clip how to do hit dreadlocks in Asian hair on her phone, which is quite a cute little thing. Also not very good for a relationship that he's teasing his girlfriend behind her back with his friend. Yeah, Jenny's a big fan of Sasha, and while Sasha is about to leave, Jenny invites her to a meal because she would be honored to cook for Sasha. Sasha's got a sense that things are going to get interesting, so she changes her mind and goes along. The meal looks like pasta made with tinned tomatoes and Vienna sausages, which, and no judgment, I do cook like that sometimes myself, but I'm not going to invite a chef around to the house to cook for them and put up a meal like that. Got to have a little bit of pride in that situation. And then I can't really talk too much more directly about the movie. Like I say, it's a typical romantic comedy with twists and turns and little will days or won't days, but ultimately they will, which is not a spoiler. There's a lot of sort of tropey stuff that it does, and there's a lot of tropey stuff that it plays with. And it's just generally like a fantastic good time. I highly recommend you check it out. It's up on Netflix. I'll link the trailer in the show notes. The trailer does go quite a lot into what happens in the movie, but there's little details that are definitely worth checking out. And like I say, it's like not even 2 hours of your time, so I do recommend you go and have a look. So I've come up a little bit short on my running time on this episode. I tell you to take your time while listening, and yet it's going to feel a little bit rushed if you've gotten to the end of it and you're already awake. So I've thrown a little bit of a surprise here in the end. One of my older catnap episodes from early days has a little bit of an extra story time. Thank you very much. The Colonel said, "We rode for several hours straight from the shore toward the heart of the island. The sun was low in the western sky when we left the ship, Neither on the water nor on the land had we felt a breath of air stirring. The glare was upon everything. Over the low range of hills, miles away in the interior, hung a few copper-coloured clouds. "Wind," said Briary. Kalua shook his head. Vegetation of all kinds showed the effects of the long-continued drought. The eye wandered without relief from the sticky russet of the undergrowth, so dry in places that leaves and stems crackled under the horses' feet, to the yellowish brown of the thirsty trees that skirted the bridle path. No growing thing was green except the belltop cactus, fit to flourish in the crater of a living volcano. Kalua leaned over in the saddle and tore from one of these plants its top, as big as a California pear and bloated with juice. He crushed the bell in his fist and, turning, flung into our hot faces a few grateful drops of water. Then the guard began to talk rapidly in his language of vowels and liquids. Briary translated for my benefit. The god La loved a woman of the island. He came in the form of fire. She, accustomed to the ordinary temperature of the climb, only shivered before his approaches. Then he wooed her as a shower of rain and won her heart. Kokal was a divinity much more powerful than La, but malicious to the last degree. He also coveted this woman who was very beautiful. Kokal's importunities were in vain. In spite, he changed her to a cactus and rooted her to the ground under the burning sun. The god La was powerless to avert this vengeance, but he took up his abode with the cactus woman, still in the form of a rain shower, and never left her, even in the driest seasons. Thus it happens that the belltop cactus is an unfailing reservoir of pure, cool water. Long after dark we reached the channel of a vanished stream, and Kalua led us for several miles along its dry bed. We were exceedingly tired when the guide bade us dismount. He tethered the panting horses and then dashed into the dense thicket on the bank. 100 yards of scrambling and we came to a poor thatched hut. The man raised both hands above his head and uttered a musical falsetto, not unlike the yodel peculiar to the Valais. This call brought out the occupants of the hut, upon whom Briary flashed the light of his lantern. It was an old woman, hideous beyond the imagination of a dyspeptic stream. "Omana Galal," exclaimed Kalua. "Hail, holy woman," translated Briary. Between Kalua and the holy hag there ensued a long colloquy, respectful on his part, sententious and impatient on hers. Briary listened with eager attention. Several times he clutched my arm as if unable to repress his anxiety. The woman seemed to be persuaded by Kalua's arguments, or won by his entreaties. At last she pointed towards the southeast, slowly pronouncing a few words that apparently satisfied my companions. The direction indicated by the holy woman was still towards the hills, but 20 or 30 degrees to the left of the general course which we had pursued since leaving the shore. Push on," cried Briary. "We can afford to lose no time." We rode all night. At sunrise there was a pause of hardly 10 minutes for the scanty breakfast supplied by our haversacks. Then we were again in the saddle, making our way through a thicket that grew more and more difficult, and under a sun that grew hotter. "Perhaps," I finally remarked to my taciturn friend, "you have no objection to telling me now why two civilized beings and one amiable local should be plunging through this infernal jungle, as if they were on an errand of life or death?" "Yes," said he, "it is best you should know." Briary produced from an inner breast pocket a letter which had been read and reread until it was worn in the creases. "This," he went on, "is from Professor Kwekovicic of the University of Uppsala. It reached me at Valparaiso." Glancing cautiously around as if he feared that every tree fern in the tropical wilderness was an eavesdropper, or that the hood-like spathes of the giant caladiums overhead were ears waiting to drink in some mighty secret of science, Briary read in a low voice from the letter of the great Swedish botanist. "You will have in these islands," wrote the professor, "a rare opportunity to investigate certain extraordinary accounts given me years ago by the Jesuit missionary Puteaux concerning the migratory tree, the serious regrants of the Jacinians and other speculative physiologists. The explorer Spohr claims to have beheld it, but there is reason, as you know, for accepting all of Spohr's statements with caution. That is not the case with the assertions of my late valued correspondent, the Jesuit missionary. Father Bateau was a learned botanist, an accurate observer, and a most pious and conscientious man. He never saw the migratory tree, but during the long period of his labors in that part of the world, he accumulated from widely different sources a mass of testimony as to its existence and habits. It is quite inconceivable, my dear Briary, that somewhere in the range of nature there's a vegetable organization as far above the cabbage, let us say, in complexity and potentiality, as the ape is above the polyp. Nature is continuous. In all her schemes we find no chasms, no gaps. There may be missing links in our books and classifications and cabinets, but there are none in the organic world. Is it not all of lower nature struggling upward to arrive at the point of self-consciousness and volition? In the unceasing process of evolution, differentiation, improvement in special functions, why may not a plant arrive at this point and feel, will, act, in short, possess and exercise the characteristics of a true animal? Briary's voice trembled with enthusiasm as he read this. I have no doubt, continued Professor Quackfussuch, that if it shall be your great good fortune to encounter a specimen of the migratory tree, as described by Bateau, you will find that it possesses a well-defined system of real nerves and ganglia, constituting in fact the seat of vegetable intelligence. I conjure you to be very thorough in your dissections. According to the indications furnished me by the Jesuit, this extraordinary tree should belong to the order of Cactaceae. It should be developed only in conditions of extreme heat and dryness. Its roots should be hardly more than rudimentary, affording a precarious attachment to the earth. This attachment it should be able to sever at will, soaring up into the air and away to another place, selected by itself as a bird shifts its habitation. I infer that these migrations are accomplished by means of the property of secreting hydrogen gas, with which it inflates a bladder-like organ of highly elastic tissue, thus lifting itself out of the ground and off to a new abode. Bateau added that the migratory tree was invariably worshipped by the natives as a supernatural being, and that the mystery thrown by them around its cult was the greatest obstacle in the path of the investigator. There, exclaimed Briary, folding up Professor Quackfussuch's letter. Is not that a quest worthy of the risk or sacrifice of life itself? To add to the recorded facts of vegetable morphology the proved existence of a tree that wanders, a tree that wills, a tree perhaps that thinks. This is a glory to be won at any cost. The lamented decandole of Geneva. Confound the lamented decandole of Geneva, shouted I, for it was excessively hot and I felt that we had come on a fool's errand. It was near sunset on the second day of our journey when Kalua, who was riding several rods in advance of us, uttered a quick cry, leapt from his saddle, and stooped to the ground. Briary was at his side in an instant. I followed with less agility. My joints were very stiff and I had no scientific enthusiasm to lubricate them. Briary was on his hands and knees, eagerly examining what seemed to be a recent disturbance of the soil. The guide was prostrate, rubbing his forehead in the dust as if in a religious ecstasy and warbling the same falsetto notes that we had heard at the holy woman's hut. What beast's trail have you struck? I demanded. The trail of no beast, answered Briary, almost angrily. Do you see this broad round abrasion of the surface where a heavy weight was rested? Do you see these little troughs in the fresh earth radiating from the centre like the points of a star? They are the scars left by slender roots torn up from their shallow beds. Do you see Kalua's hysterical performance? I tell you we are on track of the sacred tree. It has been here, and not long ago. Acting under Briary's excited instructions, we continued the hunt on foot. Kalua started towards the east, I towards the west, and Briary took the southward course. To cover the ground thoroughly, we agreed to advance in gradually widening zigzags. communicating with each other at intervals by pistol shots. There could have been no more foolish arrangement. In a quarter of an hour, I had lost my head and my bearings in a thicket. For another quarter of an hour, I discharged my revolver repeatedly, without getting a single response from east or south. I spent the remainder of daylight in a blundering effort to make my way back to where the horses were, and then when the sun went down, leaving me in sudden darkness, alone in a wilderness of the extent and character of which I had not the faintest idea. I will spare you the history of my sufferings during the whole of the night, and the next day, and the next night, and another day. When it was dark, I wandered about in blind despair, longing for daylight, not daring to sleep or even to stop, and in continual terror of the unknown dangers that surrounded me. In the daytime, I longed for night, for the sun scorched its way through the thickest roof that the luxuriant foliage afforded, and drove me nearly mad. The provisions in my haversack were exhausted. My canteen was on my saddle. I should have died of thirst had it not been for the bell-top cactus which I found twice. But in that horrible experience, neither the torture of hunger, nor thirst, nor the torture of heat equaled the misery of the thought that my life was to be sacrificed to the delusion of a crazy botanist who had dreamed of the impossible. The impossible. On the second afternoon, still staggering aimlessly on through the jungle, I lost my last strength and fell to the ground. Despair and indifference had long since given way to an eager desire for the end. I closed my eyes with indescribable relief. The hot sun seemed pleasant on my face as consciousness departed. Did a beautiful and gentle woman come to me while I lay unconscious, and take my head in her lap and put her arms around me? Did she press her face to mine and in a whisper bid me to have courage? That was the belief that filled my mind when it struggled back for a moment into consciousness. I clutched at the warm, soft arms and swooned again. Do not look at each other and smile, gentlemen. In that cruel wilderness, in my helpless condition, I found pity and benign tenderness. The next time my senses returned, I saw that something was bending over me. Something majestic if not beautiful, humane if not human, gracious if not woman. The arms that held me and drew me up were moist, and they throbbed with the pulsation of life. There was a faint sweet odor like the smell of a woman's perfumed hair. The touch was a caress, the clasp an embrace. Can I describe its form? No, not with the definiteness that would satisfy the quackforsuchers and the briaries. I saw that the trunk was massive. The branches that lifted me from the ground and held me carefully and gently were flexible and symmetrically disposed. Above my head there was a wreath of strange foliage, and in the midst of it a dazzling sphere of scarlet. The scarlet globe grew while I watched it, but the effort of watching was too much for me. Remember, if you please, that at this time physical exhaustion and mental torture had brought me to the point where I passed to and fro between consciousness and unconsciousness as easily and frequently as one fluctuates between slumber and wakefulness during a night's fever. It seemed the most natural thing in the world that in my extreme weakness I should be loved and cared for by a cactus. I did not seek an explanation of this good fortune or try to analyze it. I simply accepted it as a matter of course, as a child accepts a benefit from an unexpected quarter. The one idea that possessed me was that I had found an unknown friend, instinct with womanly sympathy and immeasurably kind. And as night came on, it seemed to me that the scarlet bulb overhead became enormously distended so that it almost filled the sky. Was I gently rocked by the supple arms that still held me? Were we floating off together into the air? I did not know, or care. Now, I fancied that I was in my berth on board ship, cradled by the swell of the sea. Now that I was sharing the flight of some great bird. Now that I was borne on with prodigious speed through the darkness by my own volition. The sense of incessant motion affected all my dreams. Whenever I awoke, I felt a cool breeze steadily beating against my face, the first breath of air since we had landed. I was vaguely happy, gentlemen. I had surrendered all responsibility for my own fate. I had gained the protection of a being of superior powers. The brandy flask Kahlua. It was daylight. I lay upon the ground, and Briary was supporting my shoulders. In his face was a look of bewilderment I shall never forget. "My God," he cried, "and how did you get here? We gave up the search 2 days ago." The brandy pulled me together. I staggered to my feet and looked around. The cause of Briary's extreme amazement was apparent at a glance. We were not in the wilderness. We were at the shore. There was the bay, and the ship at anchor, half a mile off. They were already lowering a boat to send for us. And there to the south was a bright red spot on the horizon, hardly larger than the morning star. The balloon tree returning to the wilderness. I saw it. Briary saw it. The guide Kalua saw it. We watched it till it vanished. We watched it with very different emotions. Kalua with superstitious reverence. Briary with a scientific interest and intense disappointment. I with a heart full of wonder and gratitude. I clasped my forehead with both hands. It was no dream then. The tree, the caress, the embrace, the scarlet bulb, the night journey through the air, were not creations and incidents of delirium. Call it tree or call it plant animal, there it was. Let men of science quarrel over the question of its existence in nature. This I know. It had found me dying and had brought me more than 100 miles straight to the ship where I belonged. Under Providence, gentlemen, that sentient and intelligent vegetable organism had saved my life. At this point, the colonel got up and left the club. He was very much moved. Pretty soon, Briary came in, briskly as usual. He picked up an uncut copy of Lord Bragmuch's Travels in Cogollone's Land and settled himself in an easy chair at the fireplace. Young Tradies timidly approached the veteran globetrotter. "Excuse me, Mr. Briary," said he, "but I should like to ask you a question about the balloon tree. Were there scientific reasons for believing that its sex was—" interrupted Briary, looking bored. "The colonel has been favouring you with that extraordinary narrative. Has he honoured me again with a share in the adventure?" "Yes." "Well, did we bag the game this time?" "By Jove, another miss," said Briary, calmly beginning to cut the leaves of his book. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepytime Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in the new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Un Deseo by Kumiku. Check out more of their work on their website and their Patreon, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night, and sweet dreams.